Maybe so.
Maybe so. We're gonna kick it off tonight. Pledge of allegiance to the U.S. flag by Councilmember Daniel Booker. Then City Manager Sam Listy will lead us this pledge, and then John Holmes will say our invocation. So please rise.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The Texas flag.
Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to Texas, one state under God, one and indivisible.
Please join me in prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, we just thank you for today with our community, citizens, and neighbors. Thank you for our first responders and the city staff that keep our city moving every day without much worry or concern at all. Help us be good stewards to our taxpayers and also to you. Thank you for all you have given, bestowed upon us, and help us and trust and be good stewards of all you've given. Help us to love, forgive, and love a little more. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen. All right, we will call this June 22nd council meeting to order at 5:32. On our agenda, the first item, public comment. Citizens who wish to address the council on any non-agenda item may do so at this time. I have 2 people sign up, but those are on agenda items. If anyone wishes to speak before the council and address anything, they are welcome to do so. There being no one speaking in the public comment section, we will close that and move on to our consent agenda. Items 3 through 6 in this consent agenda can be enacted by single motion. If the council wishes to remove one of these for separate consideration, they may do so. I will read these for your pleasure. The first one is to minutes of the June 10th council meeting. Item 4 is appointing to the Planning and Zoning Commission both Brett Baggerly and Damon Gottschalk. Item 5 is approving a final plat Mill Creek Phase 4 comprising approximately 7.6 acres at the intersection of West Avenue D and Sadie Brush Drive. And item 6 is awarding a bid and authorizing the city manager to execute a construction contract with Tatum Contracting Services for the cross access connection between 106 and 108 Lake Road, and any change orders associated with the contract not to exceed the amount authorized under state law. And for those of you who do not know, we're 108 Lake Road. That's that art place and Pop Shelf. I'm sure that people want a speedy exit out of Pop Shelf and the art place, or vice versa, but that's where that is. Does anybody wish to remove any of these? So the chair would entertain a motion.
I move we approve item through 6 as presented.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. Any other comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? 6-0. All right, on to planning and zoning. Z-2517, hold a public hearing and consider appeal of the Planning and Zoning Commission recommendation regarding a zoning change from planned development Fort 8 restaurant with drive-through to planned development retail on approximately 1.65 acres located at 121 Lake Road. Miss Tina.
And thank you, Mr. Mayor. How everybody is doing tonight.
Oh.
All right, for this first item, this is for a Break Plus store that's going to be located at, wishing to be located off of Lake Road. This is an automotive minor repair, which is allowed in the retail zoning district. This is an amending existing plan development, PD 30, that was approved early 2000s. Also, this is subject to TxDOT approval of a driveway. Here is the proposed site plan. There is a driveway access proposed off of Lake Road that requires TxDOT approval. There's also shared access between the 2 existing business, Bush's Chicken, and also today's car wash to the north of the site, or to the west of the site. For building this, the previous development had conditions for the building elevation. It required 30% masonry material. For what's being proposed, they're exceeding that requirement. The site has 20 parking spaces exceeding the minimum requirements for 5, actually 10 required parking spaces. Screening, the previous PD had a requirement for screening next to a residential area. There are no residential area adjacent to this. Everything else in this area is zoned similarly as a retail zoning. So that's no longer required. For landscaping, the previous development agreement had standards prior to the design standards being adopted. So this will be put in place the current design standards that they would have to follow and meet instead of the previous one. The future land use map supports a commercial and retail development. The proposed complies with that future land use map. For public notices, we received no letters of support or opposition for the zoning changes. However, during the public meeting, one person spoke in opposition at the Planning and Zoning Commission hearing. With that, the meeting on May 20th of the Planning and Zoning Commission, they voted 6-1 to recommend disapproval of the requested zoning changes. With that, council will need to have a supermajority vote for this to pass. Staff is recommending approval of the zoning because it's consistent with the future land use map and also a consistency with the other adjacent properties next to it. For the conditions, we recommend the use of the shall conform to the retail district. Again, text out approval for the requested driveways required prior to the approval of the construction, and it must follow the design standards that are adopted currently. With that, staff will be happy to answer any questions that you guys have, and also the applicant are here should you have any questions for them.
All right, this item being a public hearing item, anyone who wishes to speak in favor or in opposition to this item may do so. So we will stop our deliberation and open the floor for those who wish to make comment. I do have two that have signed up. The first one is Tyler Hendon with Breaks Plus. If you don't mind, for the record, just name and address for the record so we have that in our minutes.
All right. My name is Tyler Hendon. I'm with Breaks Plus. So I'm actually in Alabama, Texas, but so we're right along Lake Road there. So I appreciate you guys hearing us here at this meeting and taking the time to do so. Obviously, we're excited to be here. We've got numerous establishments in Texas. It's a growing market for us, and definitely Belton is one we want to be in, excited to be in. And I know one of the biggest I guess one opposition was just the proximity to a local auto repair shop. And one thing I'll say, and this is something we've seen in our business, we've gone in next to many auto repair shops and all have been successful. And one in particular, Discount Tire, we go into a lot with this brand Breaks Plus. We don't do tires, and so it actually is a business jar in that sense, because a lot of people come in, they need that service, and we have to refer that out because we don't do it at those locations. So I think it could actually be a very positive thing for that area. Being a national brand, folks looking for auto repair, that's going to draw more people to that area. So probably generate more customers in that area needing those services, which would be a benefit for both establishments in the area. If obviously providing good services, which I believe both do. So, and so I just also took a little bit of drive around the city as well, before the meeting. One thing I noticed over by the Walmart, I think there's a Goodyear at Take 5 and the auto place at the Walmart as well, all on the same corner. And all seem to be doing well. And I would imagine Take 5 is probably relatively new because it's a growing brand as well. So they obviously see that there's a lot of opportunity, even being near other establishments that do the same thing. So, I think at the end of the day, I think it would be a positive for that area, for the other business as well, and probably generate some more business for them just by us being there, need to refer some things out that they do that we don't do. So, so we look forward to being here, excited to be here. If you guys have any questions about us as a company, or anything you may have, we're happy to answer it.
All right. Thank you. All right. Next I had is Jeff McGuire, who signed up. Name and address for the record.
Jeff McGuire, 3201 Matador Cove, Belton, McGuire Tire and Auto at 103 Lake Road. Belton High School graduate. All my kids are in Belton. In fact, my oldest son works for the company now. He's a senior and working this summer. Proud dad moment because it's 4 generations of our business since 1947. We do automotive services. My main concern with Department of Transportation required us to have cross access. With this particular business, it would require us to have the same driveway. We would be sharing the same cross access between both properties. My concern is the service density being so high with that, would water down the integrity of either business overall in the long term. Now, there's 10 automotive repair businesses in Belton that are very successful because we're spread out. Different travel corridors, different customer base. Never asked restrictions for growth. I would hope that we could spread a little bit.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, these are the two I had signed up. If anyone else did not sign up but does wish to speak either in favor or in opposition to this, they may do so at this time. All right, there being no more public comments, we will close the floor and reconvene on this item. You guys have any comments or questions or a motion?
Tina, it looks like there's a driveway on the site plan. Is that correct?
It is. There is a proposed driveway there, but that has not been accepted by TxDOT. Emailed them a couple times, have not received response. They usually like to deal directly with the applicant to get some conditions established. So that's why there's a approval condition for TxDOT's approval on that proposed driveway.
So will this zoning not be applicable if it's overturned here? So if the zoning were then approved, but TxDOT didn't allow the new driveway, does that overturn the zoning?
No, sir, that just means they would not be able to get the new driveway. They would have to share access with the two that they already have shared access with. They're shared access with Bushes on the east side and today's car wash on the west. They
Right.
could still, if this was approved, they could still construct, but they just would not be allowed to have that driveway, that independent driveway that comes directly to their.
And the access that's shown is in the same place as the access that the house, that was the residence that was there that's now become commercial?
It is close to that, yes, sir.
Thank you.
I'll just say from, I've been involved with zoning city for close to 12 years now. And, zoning is interesting because us as either P and Z members or city council members, we're up here to be neutral referees. And so when we have two businesses, one owned by multi-generational Beltonian, one someone from out of town, we have to treat them equally. Whereas personally, of course, I'd rather go do business with a, multi-generational Beltonian. That's what I am. But our zoning ordinances are there to protect public health, safety, welfare. They're there to help us with separating certain things that need to be separated. We don't, we have our neighborhood zones, our retail zones, our industrial zones. But our zoning is never used to stifle competition or pick winners and losers. And, we have plenty of examples of this where we have, we're about to have a, right around the corner from this, about to have a Jack in the Box next to a Wendy's, next to a McDonald's, next to a Panda Express. They all their food businesses, but in the end, it ends up being better for Belton because we're able to have them compete customer service wise. It can lower prices. So in the end, it ends up better for our community. So I would just say when I see this, I think it actually makes the case for it that McGuire's is right next door to it, because in a city council before us that said this is a great area to have a great auto retail store. And it's hard to make the argument. I can't really think of a way to make the argument against it, because you can't say it doesn't fit the area, because not only is McGuire's there, there's also a Goodyear right around the corner from it. And so for me, I feel like that this should be approved and we should allow them to come in.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions?
Only thing I would add is I own a real estate business on Main, and if somebody wanted to come put a real estate, if Shaw's wanted to come open an office right next door to me, I would say, come on, go somewhere else. But as we're sitting here with representing the city government for Belton, I'm Luke. I don't think that we can say that that type of business is not appropriate in that location. So as disappointed as I would be in my little anecdotal scenario, I think the zoning fits the requested use.
Thank you.
And I think because it's zoning, we have to just consider the aptness of the area and of course, when it gets to plating, the safety, et cetera. And this being the case, it's clearly an appropriate location. Awkward in that it's so close to us, but it's also right next door to another automotive business, the car wash. So I don't think there's any way we can to turn it down as a zoning.
Thank you. You don't have to say anything, but
I'm good.
it seems like we're going down the road, so.
Move to approve item Z 2517.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second to, let me make sure, to grant the appeal of this zoning. Any other comments or questions before we vote?
No matter what votes are, I'll remain
I will
where I'm loyal.
Yeah, I will say this, I'll just, as an example of a local business, we opened a movie theater in 2012 and there was no local movie theater. And then Cinemark opened up about 4 or 5 miles away, and we saw a decrease business because we're showing the same movies they were showing. And so if they were closer to that one, they'd go to that one. If they're closer to ours, they'd go to ours. I do know that if you had an alignment place, a brake place, and a tire place, all in close proximity, that one customer will probably go to those 3 places because they don't all do the same thing. So some things are complementary, some things are competitive. I do see this as complementary. Even if I saw it as competitive, even if Cinemark wanted to come into Belton, like Dave said, I wouldn't like, actually, movies industry, they kind of frown on people moving too close together. But as a council, we've got to have a little bit more blinders on when it comes to these types of cases. So, yeah. All right. All in favor of granting the appeal, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? All right, passes 6. All right, that's item 7. Item 8. Similarly, we'll have a public hearing. So we're going to hold a public hearing and consider a zoning change from highway to 2-family for a proposed duplex on approximately 0.3 acres located at 395 West Avenue J. Ms. Tina.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Sorry, over here trying to referee.
Okay, sorry.
This property is currently zoned commercial highway, was part of a big zoning overhaul back in 2002. There are residential uses in an area, and the applicant is proposing a 2-family duplex at this property. The future land use map shows this as a mixed use 1, which allows for residential and commercial uses in that area. This is on city water and sewer services. Property owner notices went out. There was 1 letter of support from adjacent property owner in the area. With that, the planning and zoning heard this at their meeting last week on the 17th and recommended approval of the zoning change. I'll be happy to answer questions that you guys have, and I don't see the applicant here.
All right. Even if there's not an applicant, we will stop our deliberation, open the floor for any comments, either positive or negative, for this 2-family duplex. There being no public comments, we will close the floor. Chair would entertain a motion, or if you have questions for Tina.
Love a good infill. Motion to approve item as presented.
And it's close to the new park.
Yeah, a motion and a second to approve this item, and with a comment that a good infill. We always like good infill. Any other comments before we vote? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? All right, that one also passes 6-0. Item 9, hold a public hearing and consider zoning change from ag to single family 1 for residential use on approximately 1.125 acres located at 1918 Auction Barn Road. Again, Ms. Tina.
Thank you. This is a little bit of a recall for some of you. There was a recent zoning change to approve a office showroom here adjacent to this property. However, we've been doing a subdivision review for the lots and realized that the adjacent residential property did not meet the area requirements for agricultural. So therefore, we have to zone it to something that fits with the current use and also the area size requirement. So the applicant is proposing a single family one, which requires some square foot lot, and that exceeds the lot size, but that was that requirement. This is, there is an existing home on here, and there are other houses adjacent to this property, right on the county limits. For the future land use map, this also has it as juice one, which allows for residential and retail. There is City of Belton water here and sewer available here. However, the house is serviced by on-site sewage system. Property owner notices were sent out to property owners within 200 feet. We received no letters of objections or support for this. The applicant is here. But the Planning and Zoning Commission recommended approval of this zoning change at their meeting last week as well. I'll be happy to answer any questions that you guys have on this.
Again, we will open the floor for public comments on this item. If anyone wishes to speak in favor or in opposition to this item, they may do so at this time.
It's up to you, Jeff.
Now's your moment to shine.
Well, I'm here to represent, but I don't think there's much to say. So I think we've kind of already gotten to the nitty gritty. It's just kind of a formality. So
Okay.
Jeff Lackmeyer Construction. Show my address too, dear. 1201 South W.S. Young Drive, Killeen, Texas, 76543.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. There being no other comments, we will close the floor and reconvene. The chair would entertain or comments or questions.
I move we approve item C 25-19 as presented.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the zoning. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Passes unanimously. Blazing through to item 10, hold a public hearing and consider a zoning change from agricultural to retail for the construction of a convenience store on approximately 1/3 of an acre located at 13 West 2nd Avenue. Ms. Tina.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Obviously, retail convenience cannot be constructed on that little acreage, but just wanted to show you the adjacent properties next to it. The applicant plans to subdivide all of the 3 lots that are currently, well, the 2 others that's some retail to construct the convenience store. So this is just a little piece that's closer to Loop 121 that still has an agricultural zoning. So this is more of a cleanup to get it consistent with the adjacent zoning around it.
All right. Go ahead.
Sorry. The future land use map shows this as a commercial retail. Water is on both the dual Dogridge and Belton CCN. Sewer is going to be provided by the City of Belton. Property owner notices were sent out. We received 1 letter of support from an adjacent property owner. The Zoning Commission heard this at their meeting last Tuesday and recommended approval of this zoning change. I'll be happy to answer any questions you guys have, and also the applicant's representative are here as well.
Okay. Awesome. All right, again, this being a public hearing, we will open the floor, and anyone who wishes to speak in favor or opposition to this item may do so at this time. A long skin through on this one.
Can't get anything
Fuel
past
pumps on.
Chandler. There you go. We're gonna squeeze that convenience store. No, so it goes with the property that's east of here. You guys have probably seen our sign, trying to get a convenience store right there, but 2 different owners. One had already rezoned his. This one that we're dealing with had not. So we're just trying to match up the zoning so we can go forward.
Okay, awesome.
Oh, sorry, Tommy Shaw Properties, 4707 High Oak Drive, Belton, Texas. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? There being none, we'll close the floor and reconvene. Chair would entertain a motion.
Move we approve item Z 25-20 as presented.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the zoning. Any comments or questions? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Passes 6-0. Item 11, hold a public hearing and consider zoning changes related to the Imagine Belton standards change from single family 2, single family 3, 2 family, SUP, specific use permit, single family two, PDR, I'll just read it. SF2 with a CRA and several SUPs to the neighborhood zone. I like the sound of neighborhood zone versus alphabet soup before that, so.
Appreciate that for sure.
It says Tina, look like Tina, so I'm guessing Tina's not presenting this one. All right, Bob.
I'm apologizing for that up front.
That's okay.
There we go. We have some pictures I will want to run through and maybe we can get them up on the screen. I don't know if I need to do anything with that.
Is it gonna look like an?
And I sure hope so. Yes, it would. Matter of fact, it will.
Well, we can use our imagination. We're good.
We are talking about Imagine Belton, so.
Yeah,
here we
might
go.
as well use your imagination. That's all there is right now.
Thing that worries me the most about these things is the technology involved.
Now, look at that. We're good.
Okay, excellent. Thank you very much. So the purpose of this is to conduct a public hearing and consider rezoning portions of the Imagine Belton area to the neighborhood zone. As you may remember, the Imagine Belton plan was adopted back in 22. The result of that was the Imagine Belton standards. Once the standards were adopted, we created the plan to rezone areas of town in conformance with the plan, and the plan was basically to implement the plan. This deals specifically with the neighborhood zones. The area outlined in red, you can see one on the north side, which is just south of the railroad, on the east side, which is just south of E6, on the south, which is on either side of Pearl Street, and on the west side, which is where we are today. And so those areas are currently under consideration. As you may recall, when we adopted the ordinance for the Imagine Belton standards, the first two zones that we rezoned was the central downtown and the uptown zones. And then we, on our third step of the implementation, were to rezone the other zones later. And so this is what we're doing right now is continuing on with that. And we are currently dealing with the neighborhood zone. Just a quick drill down on the neighborhood zone. It is entirely residential and is intended to protect the integrity of the residential zones in the Imagine Belton area. So we will see things like single family detached, duplex, townhome, cottage homes, variety of residential uses, as y'all may remember. It allows for more mobility in the residential standards and provides more opportunity for options of residential development, at the same time protecting the integrity of the existing residential zones, the residential uses. This is a copy of the land use matrix. As you can see, that outlined in red is basically the uses. You can see at the very top, the Ps and PCs, which is for residential development. Towards the bottom, you can see things like churches and of course municipal facilities that are necessary for the operation of the neighborhoods, water, pump stations, things like that, if needed. So the land use matrix, and that's indicative of the limited uses in that area. So it's not across the spectrum as you may expect from the other zones, like the transition zone or the downtown zone, things like that. Quick word about, grandfathering and non-conforming uses. Just to remind you that existing uses are by, even though the zoning is changing, if the use continues without an abandonment or a year or more, or a desire to expand it, and our code says more than 10%, then they may challenge that non-conforming use. Other than if it stays that way, it'll stay that way forever, and it won't be challenged by any of the current zoning efforts. So just to wrap up, we did present this to our Planning and Zoning Commission meeting last week, and they recommended approval of the rezoning. So Mayor, I'd encourage us to have a public hearing this evening, and staff concurs with the recommendation from the Planning Commission, and we would suggest that you consider rezoning these the neighborhood zone to the Imagine Belton plan.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you very much. All right, like Bob said, we're encouraged to have a public hearing, and this is one of the last ones we'll have. Well, no, actually, we do have a couple more. Not much public left. Anyone who wishes to speak in favor or in opposition to this item may do so at this time. There being no public comments, we will go back to, I don't know what our comments are public, but anyway, we'll close and start the deliberation, the public deliberation of your elected council. Any comments, questions, or motion?
My only question being, where do ADUs fit into this zone? Are they, and I don't remember reading that in the all the Imagine Belton stuff, and I know we've had a few in these areas. Just wasn't sure how that.
They would be permitted, but they'd be permitted according to our ADU standards in the current zoning ordinance.
Got it.
What about, are there, I know you said it's all neighborhood, but are short-term rentals and bed and breakfast would they still be allowed in those areas?
Yes, sir. We're not affecting our short-term rental ordinance either.
So with any property in this zone, there could be other things that are sort of overlaid on top of the Imagine Belton standards, whether it's a short-term rental ordinance or an ADU ordinance or a historical preservation ordinance or something like that. You could have multiple layers.
Yes, sir.
That affect the same property.
Yes, sir. Very
This
good.
doesn't negate any other thing.
Correct. Thank you for bringing that up. I also like to add, we did have, during our public hearing with the Planning and Zoning Commission, we had about a dozen people show up at the public hearing. We talked to all of them basically outside the meeting and were able to answer their questions. Nobody spoke during the public hearing, and I assume that's because they were satisfied with the answers that they got. We received maybe about 4 letters in favor of the rezoning effort. And we mailed out about 700 or so.
Your PR campaign has been admirable. I think we've really tried to answer every question that citizens or folks affected in the zone had, and answered those well. And so pro neighborhood.
Yep. Great.
Thank you.
I think it's important to note that this has been years in the making.
Yes.
Great effort led by BEDC to kick off the Imagine Belton stuff. Obviously, there's been some confusion along the way with residents going, well, what does this mean for me? And thinking that, this means that somebody's going to come put a multi-story commercial building right next to my house. And this zone is unique in that it protects the neighborhood characteristic of these 4 or 5 areas or whatever
Yes, sir.
it is. So I think an important component of the Imagine Belton standards. And so I'm glad to support this one.
And no impact on tax value.
No.
Which was a big concern.
Yep.
Got it. In other zones.
Yep.
So I move we approve agenda item.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the neighborhood zone to replace all the alphabet soup. Any other comments or questions before we vote? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Again, passes 6-0. Item 12, hold a public hearing and regarding annexation of 94.514 acres located in the OT survey abstract number 20, including the right-of-way of FM 436 from Elm Grove Road to the east of the property line of property owned by Ridge Land Investments, LLC. Mr. Bob.
You again. As you mentioned, this item is set aside for a public hearing for the annexation of those 94 acres. This property is located on the north side of FM 436 east of Hubbard Branch subdivision. This is of where it's located. It's the area that is outlined in red, including the right of way. The owner of the property intends to build a residential single-family detached subdivision of about 250, maybe more homes. Water and sewer is available from the city of Belton. And as you may recall, our ordinance requiring voluntary annexation is implemented in this case because the property owner would like to tie onto our system. Water is in the Belton CCN and sewer is in an uncertificated area. So we'd have to resolve that as we go through the development. Today, we're talking only about the public hearing, and I share this exhibit only to show you that there are some areas that we are talking with Temple about exchanging, and you can see areas, area A, B, and C. A and B, let's see, we can kind of in this area here, area A, proposing to exchange to Belton. Area B would maybe be exchanged to Belton, and Area 3 would be with Temple. And the reason for that is, we need Area B in order to get through the area that we're annexing, because we can't annex through ETJ. This is that area right here. And then while we're involved with, thought it would be wise to kind of even out the boundaries along the Leon River. As you can see, the Leon River is there, and we might be able to exchange the, for lack of a better word, the horn there, with the areas that are on our side of the river. So hopefully that will work. We have shared the agreement with Temple. Temple is agreeable to the exchange. And so hopefully that'll work out really well. And once the time is here, hopefully you guys will agree as well. So that is delaying action on both as well as the annexation in terms of action on the ordinance. So we thought it would be wise to conduct the public hearing and be done with that. And then when we have all the details worked out with Temple and they've agreed to the exchanges, we'll bring all those agreements and ordinances back to the city council and ask you all to do the same if you are in agreement. We're asking them to do that first. So our recommendation is to conduct the public hearing and to postpone on the ordinance to date as soon as we get the agreement back from Temple. So I wanted to give you that kind of a backstory why we not having the ordinance on the agenda today. As a matter of fact, we went through the process, and then with all the things that were going on, the city, the agreement with the city Temple fell through the cracks. So my apologies about that. But at least we can get this taken care of.
Okay.
Happy to step back, let you do the thing, and we can answer any questions you might have.
Right. So this not being an action item other than a public hearing due to the annexation aspect of this, if anyone wishes to speak in favor or against the potential annexation of this property, they may do so at this time. All right, there being none. Since there's not an ordinance, I do have a question. Does the property owner that we're dealing with, is that their property that's in Temple's ETJ?
No, sir. That property is all within our
No, I'm
ETJ.
asking the blue donut area B. Is that some neutral third party that owns that?
Yes, it's not owned by Tyler Ridge or, we don't,
Oh,
it's somebody else.
I believe it's a sibling of the person that sold this lot to the developer,
Okay.
if I remember correctly. Question on the red outline area to be annexed. Why are we getting the whole property? The
Sorry.
whole lot? Why are we not getting the whole lot for annexation?
The northern part, up in here, we're basically drawing the line there down the middle. The northern part is more in the flood. And so the developer said, I want to deal with that later. So we're honoring his request.
Got it. Okay.
okay.
That's the voluntary part.
Yeah.
Right.
All right. Well, that ends item 12. Item 13, the staff has asked us to go ahead and postpone that. So instead of reading it and then postponing it, I figured we just go ahead and postpone it to start with. So Chair would entertain them to postpone item Z25 to a future meeting.
So moved.
Postponed to July 22nd.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to postpone Z2521 to July 22nd, 2025. Any other comments or questions? All right, there being none, we are going to move on to miscellaneous. Item 14 of miscellaneous is consider authorizing the purchase of a 2,000-gallon water truck to serve as a high visibility incident blocker and as a water supply. Did you bring the YouTube of that water truck putting out the fire?
I should have. That would have been.
You should have done
I've
that.
seen it.
It's
Of the
great.
car on fire in the
It's like
intersection.
all the firemen trying to figure out what to do. The water truck goes
They're unrolling all the hoses. And like, he just
That would have been great.
drive by.
Sorry, I didn't know. Thanks.
That's what I expect to see out of this. I'm just kidding.
Mayor and Council, we're actually excited about this agenda
It
item.
doesn't take much to get you excited.
No, it doesn't. We have been talking about this for several years, but didn't really have an opportunity to add to a fleet. until recently when how we financed the ladder truck gave us an opportunity to add to our fleet. We thought, when analyzing the best use of that funds, we thought there's no better use than a blocker truck. So we're here today to talk about a 2,000-gallon Freightliner water truck. It's going to be dual purpose. So it'll be a highway blocker truck, and it's going to be set up that way. It'll have a lot of lights on it. It will carry 2,000 gallons of water. It'll have cones. It is going to be a blocker truck. To go with, well, we'll get to that in a minute. But it also is going to be a mobile water supply. So think about some of the rural areas that we have along the highway, south and west of us that don't have hydrants. If there's a car fire out there, we need that extra water supply. If there's grass fires, that extra water supply. So this is a great way for us to both act as a highway blocker truck and a mobile water supply. So the call volumes continue to go up on the highway, and we expect them to get a lot more call volumes when they start construction. So we really needed to move forward with this item. Central station bay size limits us. We really wanted to buy a dot blocker with the scorpion tail end on it. That's the kind that fold down. We wanted that. And the price of that truck is the same as the price of this truck, but we can't fit it in the bay at Station 1. So we started looking for alternatives. And another fire department had the same issue, and they using this very successfully using a 2,000-gallon water truck. So we're kind of stealing their idea. So operations wise, it'll act as a blocker truck out of Central. It'll utilize the blocking for the traffic on motor vehicle accidents, high-speed roadways, and highways. As a mobile water supply, it'll supply water to rural areas. It enhances the responses to structure fires and grass fires. It supports fire operations on the highway as far as getting water over there. Some alternative uses, blocking for parades and special events. That would be a great use for this truck. And we just went and bought a lot of these water barricades that you see on the screen there. This truck is a great way of filling those water barricades because it's kind of a smaller, more mobile. We can get it through the events pretty quickly and get those filled up on one tank instead of having to fill them up off the brush truck and make several trips to the hydrant to refill. So how are we going to staff this truck? We're not asking for any new FTEs to staff this truck. We're going to utilize the staffing that we have. Currently at Station 1, they have 4 firefighters that are assigned to that station each shift. When they're fully shift, one of those firefighters will be responsible for pulling the blocker truck. And 3 of the firefighters will be on the fire apparatus. Unless the structure fire comes in. If it's a structure fire in town, all 4 of them jump on the truck. A fire alarm, all 4 of them jump on a truck. Other than that 4th guy will stay back waiting for the blocker truck. If we fall down to minimum staffing because of PTO of some sort, we're still going to have the firefighter be assigned to that blocker truck, but that firefighter has to move with his crew. So if they're at the station and that highway incident happens, they jump in that highway that blocker truck and drive out to the highway. If they're outside the station and in close proximity to the station, they'll drop that firefighter off and let them come. But if they're far away from the station, we're going to either have engine 2 go to Station 1, grab the blocker, engine 2 go right out to the incident and block using the engine. We expect a staffing model without any FTEs. About 75% of the highway calls will be covered with a blocker truck. So we looked at several options. We looked at a Freightliner, a Mack, and an International. We also looked at online sales of used trucks, and United Rental had a great deal on a truck. Some of the options that we were looking at is more highway type emergency lighting, arrow stick lighting. We wanted to make sure it had a 650 gallon pump on it. So it could feed a engine that's fighting a fire. Most of the used trucks that we found had 250 gallon GPM pumps on it. So really didn't serve that mobile water supply operations. So we went back to looking at the three trucks, and I got with Gary, our fleet member, and Gary highly recommended the Freightliner because the most of their vehicles are Freightliners, already set up to work on Freightliners. So although it's not the cheapest, we expect it's going to save some money at the end by doing a lot of that is in-house. So it's consistent with our existing fleet. We have compatibility with stock. It reduces downtime with in-house maintenance. So what is the cost? I want to remind council the cost of the ladder truck. 1.6, I think it was, million. This truck is $153,000. The engine cost about $800,000. So we think this is a great, financially, this is a great option to serve as a blocker truck and be able to keep an engine off the highway. We expect about 30,000 in upfitting. That includes radios, more lighting, and some highway equipment. How are we going to pay for it? I mentioned earlier with that financing of the ladder truck, how we did it, it left us a little bit of surplus in our vehicle replacement. And that's what we're going to use to purchase this truck as a capital equipment replacement fund. I'm sure Mike can answer any questions if y'all have more on that. It's not the lowest quote, but in the long run, I think it's actually going to save the city some money on maintenance costs. So what we're recommending is authorizing purchase of the Freightliner 2,000 gallon water truck to be used as a blocker and mobile water supply. Okay. Any questions?
Yes. All your firefighters are or will be licensed and trained to operate.
Yeah, it's not a CDL truck. A 2,000 gallon single axle is not a CDL truck. So yeah,
somebody from jump in it and run it over to the.
Yep.
and just
you could all drive it. Now,
Yeah.
all of our firefighters have Class B license, which allows them to drive bigger apparatus. And they're licensed. We do plan on some advanced training on highway blocking and mobile water supply.
Thank you.
Yep.
On the staffing, I guess I'm confused. It said the truck would be staffed all the time. Does that mean
I'm going to get back to that one.
if they're going to like a paramedic call, they're not rolling an engine and the
No.
water truck?
No. He'll
Got
stay
it.
back at the
firefighter will.
yes, the firefighter will stay at the station with
Got
the
it.
truck
Okay, got it.
at the ready. Yeah.
I just read all times. I was like, I didn't want a water truck roll into a
No, absolutely
pass
not.
out it.
No.
So
The only time that truck will run if it's mobile water supply is needed or block is needed.
Okay.
Other than that, it stays at the station. And when we're fully staffed, it stays at the station with one person.
My other question, that you expect 25% of our call to be blocked by a fire truck,
75%.
water truck, 25% fire truck.
Yes. And those instances are when one and engine two are at locations where it's quicker to get there with the two engines versus trying to reroute back to the station to get the water truck. Now, in some situations, we will, if it's going to be a long-term incident on the highway, and command staff is available or one of the fire marshals is available, we'll go get the blocker truck and relieve that engine.
Yeah. That was kind of my follow-up, kind of their comments about anybody can drive it. I'd highly suggest that we have some sort of contingency plan, because you say 25%, but I picture 25% of 1.6 million potentially being the drawback.
Yes. And I 100% agree with you. That's why we're here today. Now we can get a new FTE.
No, I wasn't saying that.
No?
I'm saying just coordinate a contingency plan with,
Get a new
our 21-year-old
We could.
Our,
Director's head about to pop off over
Yeah.
our 21-year-old public works CDL Class B driver that is on call, hey, just in case something happens, run and grab it, or
that could definitely be-
those types of things where they're not, well, we were closer with the big truck, that's
Our intent is to keep those fire trucks off the highway as much as possible. Right now, when we have the incident, they could be all the way down nearly into Salado for hours, and that leaves no fire.
Yep.
And we're trying to correct that issue with this blocker truck.
I was hoping that we would be able to go used on this. I feel like we're entering something into the demolition derby. No, I really think
That's what it's in.
It's gonna
It's gonna get hit.
And
We
have
a fire truck, yeah.
no,
Yeah, we know.
no,
Yes.
I just I think it's gonna get hit. And what's the insurance premium on a blocker truck? It's gotta be through the roof. And so just
Self-insured.
yeah, from a finance standpoint, we're gonna be piecing that thing together, and the intent is terrific. We need it. We need to protect our firefighters on the highway. And the more lights and painted neon green and anything you can do to get people out of the lane. But the question is not if, but when. And so we'll be repairing that thing. And I'd rather repair used than new, to be honest.
Yeah. That's, I just want, for the record, to be clear, when you say there was a lower quote, you're not saying a lower quote on this specific vehicle. You're saying there was a cheaper type of vehicle that in your opinion would work.
So, yes, we had a used one come in, and it would work as the blocker truck, but there's something you have to keep in mind on that. All that would have to be retrofitted with brackets that welded onto the tank that allows us to put emergency lighting, a compartment somewhere to be able to put the cones. All that would have to be converted over. So you're looking at a conversion cost there, of course, where this one would come designed as. The 3 quotes for the new was basically a different chassis, but all for the same type of truck.
So the lower quote was one that wasn't outfitted, and the reason you're going with the high quote is because in the end it's going to be cheaper. This is what you're saying.
For the maintenance and everything, because it matches the rest of the fleet throughout the city. All their big rigs are Freightliners. So talking to Gary, he highly recommended a Freightliner.
So it's not the cheapest, but it's the best value.
We believe so,
And the
yes.
used trucks did not have the larger pump that you need.
It doesn't. It has 250-gallon pump, which couldn't keep up on a fire scene. And we feel if we're going to be able to utilize it as a mobile water supply, which is great, it gives us some really good options. It's important to have that 650-gallon pump on it.
It's an extra 3 minutes of water, right?
Ish, yeah.
Will you get it?
And would you touch on delivery time as well?
Sure. The delivery time for the Freightliner is once we pull the trigger for the purchase paperwork, the PO's been cut, we're looking at about 2.5 months on the Freightliner. For it was, I promise you, I didn't lie to you.
I told you those clouds get angry in the afternoon.
The Freightliner also comes with the spring suspension, which is more of a heavy duty, can take more of a beating. But the other truck to get a spring suspension in would be 5 months. So we actually going to get the Freightliner a little faster.
Right. Our chair would entertain a motion.
I move we approve the purchase of the Freightliner as presented.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second to purchase the 2,000-gallon water truck produced by Freightliner. Any other comments or questions?
Did you look at options?
I did. We looked online and we also got a quote from Guy O'Brien.
Okay. Do you recall what those were?
It was 58,000 or 54, 58, but it didn't have the pump that we needed on it. And it would have to be retrofitted, which we think would be costly.
I guess I'll say this before we vote. Get a cost on a used one for the next one, like kind of plan, right? I mean, we know it's going to happen. Instead of I think the conversion will be expensive, just give us a concrete number. Because when we're up here hearing that, I mean, we need it as a great tool. Let's go for it. I'm not going to slow you down, but probably for the next one, I mean, especially if it does get hit, like let's have that. What is that cost on the used, the extra conversion, the upgrade of the pump, that kind of stuff.
Okay. I could certainly do that.
My own personal opinion is I don't like to be one and done. I mean, hiring somebody, it's really nice if you know the person, but it's always good to have another person to interview just to confirm your choice or to maybe make you doubt your choice. We don't have to compare. We have an opinion on what the second one could be, but we don't have a black and white. Like this one would take 8 years. We'd save $50,000, but it would take 8 years, to get it. We don't have to compare.
Yeah.
And it's good for us to at least, like most of our bids, to show this one was a clear choice. Number one, this was number two, and these are the reasons why. And they're quantitative, not qualitative.
Especially on an unbudgeted item, those kind of things. And if it was budgeted, I mean, you'd already had this done months ago. But
If postpone this item, is that something that we could look at in 2 weeks or 4 weeks or something to compare? I don't know how long it takes to get numbers to something like that.
So you want to look at numbers to convert the used?
Yeah, to compare what you've proposed tonight versus buying a used one and converting it to what we need.
To include the 650 pump?
Yeah.
Yep.
my question to that is, what's the clawback on freight? What do they ask for percentage wise? Can you recoup it if you cancel X amount of time? I know we haven't, but I'm saying, like, if we didn't want to slow down the 2.5 month process, would it be plausible to, like, I don't know. I mean, if there was a clawback where you could get a deposit back, then I would say.
I think we pick option A or option B. We don't go option A and hope maybe option B we can back out at A. I think we can just.
On the bid, the quote's good for 30. I think it's at the top of the number.
Yeah.
That's whatever they brought it back to me.
Yeah, I'd say I'd feel much more comfortable if we postponed it, because hearing that you could get 3 used ones for the price of one, I'd really like to see those numbers.
Okay.
So.
Well, and if the numbers you bring back to us on a used one end up being $130,000 by the time you outfit it and everything, this may be the route that we go. But I do think, as we're in the middle of budget season and talking about being conservative and stuff like that, I think we need a blocker truck and want to figure out a way to make that happen. And this may be the route we go, but I do think it would be prudent for us to go what the used option looks like.
I will tell you, when we were exploring the used options, doing the online and making some phone calls, the one we got from Guy was kind of the unicorn. It was low mileage, good price. Most of them are very high mileage, like 150 plus. And looking at the pictures of them, looked like they were old construction vehicles. If they were 2020, they were almost the price of a new vehicle.
Okay. All right, we motion in a second to authorize the purchase. We can either amend this motion or just vote it either yes or no. So all in favor of this, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Aye. So I think it was one, I heard one, and then I heard
It's
two or
defeated.
three.
It's defeated.
That's what I didn't have echolocate. All right, so we did not authorize this at this time. We did not also offer an alternative. So if that's something that y'all want to do, I think y'all heard.
Yep, we'll come back.
Okay, thank you very much.
And I would also just like to reiterate that bringing this exact proposal back to us as option A when you do it again, I think is great. And like I said, it may be what we go with. So I don't know. I know it was turned down, but don't feel like it's turned down forever necessarily.
Yeah, no, we support the effort.
Yeah.
All right, the next is hold a public hearing. Oh, I thought we were done with public hearing. We're not. Hold a public hearing and consider an ordinance amending the project plan and financing plan. Belton Increment Reinvestment Zone number 1 for the reconstruction of streets, including portions of Davis, Hughes, Avenue J, and Avenue I, the replacement of water and sewer lines along East Sixth Avenue, and construction of sidewalks along East Sixth Avenue. Mr. Rogers.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. You covered that whole agenda item in that one introduction there. So the TERS board has agreed to finance 3 projects. They've already met to and approved that. But before we can money on that, we have to add those projects to the project and financing plan of the TERS. The TERS board has already approved this addition, and tonight it's council's action. So there's these 3 projects I'll show you.
Where's the big dog?
Yeah, yeah, really. Where's the big dog? Somebody's walking the big dog along these streets that you see highlighted in yellow. Our plan is $1.5 million. Is that no? Yeah, $1.5 million. We plan to reconstruct portions of David, Hughes, J, and I around the Standpipe Park using TERS funding. That's one of the projects. I'm sorry? 2029. In 2029. Yeah, thank you for that. The second project is, I'm calling it sewer line placement. It's actually pipe bursting would be the kind of the technical term. As everyone's aware, 6th Avenue will be reconstructed by TxDOT probably in the 2020 time frame. We have some sewer lines underneath 6th Avenue that need to be replaced. So this is another $1.5 million project, and that the TERS is willing to do. And that one we'd also like to add. The timeline on this, I believe, is because that project's 2000. I think this is 2027. This is a 2026 project. So we're going to get that one underway. And the final project that the TERS is willing to pay is for, this is a good project. So this is a shared use path along both sides of 6th Avenue. We received a Federal Highway Administration grant that's facilitated by TxDOT to do this work. It's a $2 million project, of which the city is responsible for 20% of construction costs, which is about $515,000. Yeah, 510. So again, the TERS can fund the AFA for this project will come soon, I believe. After we add it to the project list and secure funding through the TERS, then you'll see that AFA at a future meeting. Good stuff happening there. So lastly, we recommend approval of adding these items by ordinance to the TERS project and financing plans. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
All right, this being a public hearing, we will do that first. So anyone who wishes to address this item either for or against may do so at this time. All right, there being none, I do have to say this for those in the room. I won't go long. Some of y'all already heard it. We were in Athens, we were in the Agora, and they had public comments, and they had these jars. And in these jars, they had water in them. And so the water, they'd put the water in, and it would drip out the hole, and you got until it ran out of water. And so your speech was good to the last drop. And so I just had to say that. That was the last public hearing.
That's good.
Good to the last drop. All right. So yeah, that's right. It kind of reminded me of that that being
there you go.
So all right. Right. So I guess actions needed by the council. So we will reconvene.
I just had a question. I was thinking when we were about what TxDOT was gonna do on the expansion of I-35, that somehow at that time they were gonna do something with Avenue 6. So, or is that they're saying they're.
Do you want to answer that one? So they're two separate projects. I think this one's the Sixth Avenue reconstruction obviously is, well, I say obviously is probably a little bit ahead of I-35 expansion. That's the times that we're hearing 2027.
Best information we have is the Sixth Avenue project. The drawing you showed a minute ago was showing it in two components, but it's all to be done at one time in 2027. So that's well in advance of the I-35 project, which is currently scheduled for 29-30 timeframe.
So I guess one is whatever they do in 29 is not gonna tear up what you're.
There certainly may be some impact at the intersection of I-35, but not for the entire corridor over to Main Street.
Oh, question regarding, I know we talked about whose responsibility is it to locate all utilities underground on Sixth Avenue for beautification purposes? Whose would that be?
If they were relocated to be put underground, that would be our responsibility.
So question being, do we know what that cost would be? Because I mean, we're going to be putting in a sidewalk, and if at this time, the 2029 money for the streets on Avenue J is packaging them into maybe some utility relocation an option?
We have an estimate.
Yeah, 12 and I believe is our number.
Oh, yeah.
You'll see when we talk about the CIP shortly.
CIP, it is a project in the out years of the CIP. You'll see in just a minute.
One of the things that we shared with
Item
the
17
with those
is going to address some of that.
Okay.
Daniel, just real quick, because I think it's valuable to loop the council into something we discussed the other day. But similar to the project that we're doing on Penelope Street, the sidewalks, we are actually looking into whether we pre-laid conduit underneath when we do a sidewalk project like this. So we lay it under the ground so it's ready. So that maybe if you're not ready to spend $12 million that day, you may be ready to, you may have an out year that you want to do it, but you don't have to rip the whole sidewalk up to do it. So we're actually doing that in Penelope. We're working on it in. We should have those details to share with you soon. And I think that would be definitely something we should consider at a minimum as we head into 2027 doing this.
Makes sense. Kind of answers my question. So, because we know what conduit we need, number of utility wise,
Absolutely.
electrical, internet.
I'll tell us exactly what we need to do,
Okay.
as would AT&T and all that stuff. So
Great use of the terrorist grants. Move to approve.
Second.
Agenda item 15.
We have a motion second to approve agenda item 15. Any other comments or questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Passes 6-0. On to the exciting theme of the summer, budget. So item 16, we will conduct a work session on fiscal year 2026 budget, considering considerations including but not limited to the following funds: hotel occupancy tax fund, TERS fund, information technology fund, building maintenance fund, and BEDC fund. Mr. Rogers.
Thank you. Yes, this is the exciting end of the pre-proposed budget discussion. And those funds we have to talk about are our special funds, our internal service funds, and then EDC. First, we'll start with the hotel occupancy tax fund. As I've shown you before, when I walk you through this before discussing 2026, I kind of want to give you an estimate of where we might be in 2025. The hotel occupancy tax fund is pretty much in line with budget. Revenue and expenditures a little bit under, but we may end the year at $1.3 million of reserves in this fund at the end of 2025. So then that takes us into 2026. The first peak is at revenues, and you'll see revenues are increasing $72,000 from this budget to this budget. I'm increasing hotel occupancy tax revenue 15% in 2026. That's the 3-year average growth rate, hotel occupancy tax fund. I'll tell you 2025 is about a 6% growth. So that 15 might be a little bit aggressive briefly, but not overly, that's not just numbers that we're talking here. Let's see. So we do have some registration fees for when folks register, like vendors and things for our events. That goes there. That budget's flat. Sponsorships comes when we ask for sponsorships of our events. That's where we record that there. And then interest income, again, like I'm doing throughout the city budget, I'm lowering next year's expectation by 10%. Still good money though for this fund. On the expenditure side, expenditures would grow by $96,000 from 407 to 503. A few things happening there. Is this other expenses you see there? That's for events. And so we plan on spending $74,000 more for various events that we put on using hotel occupancy taxes. But then staff is very excited that we're going
These
to,
are
yes, sir.
more than 1 day events.
Yes, sir.
So okay.
That's correct.
I knew that there's a legal requirement to have at least a multiple day.
Correct. That's correct. And management and staff is very excited to bring an additional $150,000 for a marketing plan. We're going to make sure everyone knows about these events. And that's really what we're trying to do, is increase our presence in advertising and in marketing for city events. If all of that happens, you see that at the end of 2026, we had increased reserves by under $93,000 to just under 1.4 million in reserves at the end of 2026. Moving on, yes.
Can I ask questions anytime?
Please do.
What is give me the short, brief answer version of why we would need to hold on to that much fund balance?
Legal requirement how to spend it.
So I guess that's the first thing. This is special revenue funding, so it is limited in what you can spend the money on. There is a challenge for finding out legal ways to spend a huge fund balance in this fund. I can't just go build a street with it. Outside of that, it's our intent to this money is here to put heads in beds. So we shouldn't be sitting on it. I mean, I'll be honest with you. And then that's not the intent, to just grow this fund balance forever. As we start to explore that marketing plan and get some feedback from how we can increase our marketing presence, advertising presence, I think you will see the expenditures increase in this fund rather considerably. We'll make everyone know about the city of Belton's events.
And part of the discussion at the retreat, the marketing consultant.
Correct.
And so that's what we're talking about in a marketing plan.
Yes, sir.
Not the city doing it, but hiring.
Correct.
Come in and tell us.
Do you want to answer that?
Right on the nail, John. We took that from the retreat. We've already reached out to at least one firm. Very, very excited. I think staff, myself, Judy, Paul have all worked with them. It's exactly what we need somebody to come in, give us a roadmap of exactly how to sell. We've got the funds to do this. So it's about coming in with also with the manpower and the firepower to execute it and get it done as well. So we've added to our event team what Judy's added with the Polka Fest, with the Legend, the wagon event downtown. So we're pulling the events. This is a large amount of money in this fund, but I think next year we're reporting tangible results to what we left the strategic plan with, which was we need to have a real impact on our awareness, tourism, we need to sell everything that we've got here. So I think we got a real chance of doing that. We still have to vet a couple other companies to satisfy, financial policy, but
We're spending the money on a comprehensive marketing overview, which starts with slogan, image, the whole 9 yards, social media. How do we reach the people in a very, very positive way
And look good.
It will start real quick with stakeholder input first. I know we've had a lot of that lately, but specific tourism, marketing, branding input, and they will take it from there. So
I will say, even though ending up significantly more, we're still having an increase in our fund balance of roughly 90,000. I think it would be really good to just go ahead and proactively put some money in there for billboards for the 4th next year, because that's going to be in next year's budget, right? There's some things that we do probably more on things that we know generally work. And go ahead and put it in the budget, whether it gets spent or not, because I think we should spend it wisely.
Yes, sir.
But I think we do need to really try to get, it's kind of, we talked to Sam one time about, vacation balances and stuff. It's like, well, if you got a plan to use it, but you never use it, then you don't really plan to use it. So if we're,
Yeah.
and I know we wanted, I just, to have 277% of fund balance with a 92,000 increase in fund balance in this year, I think we could probably come up. And I'm not personally not advocating that we just do it because we have it.
Sure. No,
But I think there's some things that we can do that impact.
And Mayor, I would add real quick on that we have large chunks of money set aside already for advertising in this year's budget.
Okay.
It's just hard to kind of trigger those funds out in a unified kind of strategic way.
Because we don't have
So,
a plan.
right.
Yeah.
So we're gonna get the plan. And I think, Mayor, to your point, we will have, coming back around this time next year, hopefully, a real idea of what we want to do and how we can go big on some stuff.
Well, but the
that you think y'all may want to do.
250th birthday celebration of our is a great time to go
Absolutely.
big. Now, obviously not spend all of that, but I mean, partnering with the chamber, I mean, doing what we can. I mean, that's one to
That's a good
put
point.
up the billboards.
That's right.
Well, I'm so excited about having a plan because I heard somebody today describe 4th of July in Belton down Central as a Norman Rockwell painting. And the flags down 6th Street and the way and the effort our community puts into it and the turnout that we have is just unbelievable. And we have an absolute jewel, and we are a jewel as a city. And I'm really looking.
It certainly may come back at mid-year or within this that year about something that we'd like to recommend to you for expenditure. Because we recognize the fund balance, we recognize the need. We are very excited about what we've looked at recently, and we want to effectively use that money.
4th,
And we
26th
certainly may
is
come back
Saturday.
for budget amendment once we know a little bit more about how we want to spend it.
Oh,
could-
random question, but being that this is the hotel occupancy budget, do we have that metric of how our hotel occupancy is actually doing month to month, year to year?
Yes.
Okay.
They actually submit reports directly and payments directly to the city, along with a report showing occupancy and things like that. They do that quarterly.
Okay.
Some do it monthly, requirement is quarterly. So yes, we track that.
Would we be able to see that?
In fact,
Just a quick note, have you any peek on the payment system or how this works? I heard somebody that had an Airbnb. Remittance of those is now required online, and that there's a 5%, 3 to 5% charge to pay those through an automated system, and that now the tax with the surcharge is upwards to 15 to 18%.
yeah. So
I just
Currently-
I didn't mean to catch you off
No, no,
guard.
no, no.
I want
That's
everybody to be-
so we are headed in that direction somewhat with we've contracted with Granicus for our short-term rental stuff. And today there's primarily, I mean, hotels mail us checks, fill out a form manually and mail us checks. And one of the things that this Granicus offers is kind of an online platform, one platform you can go and get your permit and then make payments in the whole shebang. We haven't implemented it yet. We haven't gotten that far down the road, I don't believe. So I don't think that's necessarily the case yet. Bell County is also using Granicus, and that's likely where that would have come from.
Yeah.
Because we haven't yet implemented that. I think it is set up to where the hotel and or short-term rental, we were going with that the owner of that facility would pay that credit card fee. Outside of that, that means the city pays for the credit card. And we can certainly change that. I guess it's not too late for that because we haven't implemented that. If that really, if that is a concern of council.
Sidetrack you, but just a note that.
But yes,
A comment of.
while we're on that, I'll just share with you short-term rentals, an update on that. We plan on going live with this in September. That's when we're really going to probably crack down on some enforcement. I told you before, we have about 19 or so STRs permitted. Granicus is telling us we have 15 in our city. Yeah, so we have some serious non-compliance right now. And so get that up and running, we're really gonna start at least getting folks permitted and things like that. So that's just a quick update on STRs.
All right, thank you.
Moving on. Our next fund is fund. Again, where we think we're going to end. Everything is revenues are generally in line with budget. Expenditures are about 200,000 under. This fund will probably increase reserves to 621,000 by the end of fiscal 25. So then moving into 2026 revenues. So the first thing I need to tell you is all of this that you see here is preliminary information. I don't have a certified tax roll yet, but I have that certified estimate, and I have some worksheets from Belcad. And what's showing us right now is sort of an 12% increase to the property values of the TERS for 2025 tax year, which would take that up to $468 million. One interesting thing for you to know, as of last Friday, about half of that $468 million is currently under protest, which is a very large number this late in the game. I mean, we're a month away from certification. And that was surprising to me. I haven't seen one that large yet here. But going forward, for the sake of budgeting, I can take that preliminary number, and then I apply tax rates to that. So we had mentioned before a city tax rate of 53 cents, a county tax rate of 32.37 is their current tax rate. Again, I'm just estimating at this point. But if those things happened, we would bring in just over $4 million of revenue into the TERS in fiscal 26. So what do we plan on doing with that? Well, the TERS budget actually falls by $1.2 million, and that primarily happens right there in the transfers. So that transfer, what that is moving money from this fund, operating fund, into the TERS capital project fund for future projects. And we significant contribution in 2025, $3 million. It's only 1.5 million for projects in 2026. So expenditures fall by that much. The other thing we have here is an increase in it's in the other expense category, but primarily that those are our grant programs. So in 2026, we have $150,000 included in this budget for facade grants. We've got $150,000 for building life safety grants. We have $50,000 for murals, $15,000 for signage. So that's $365,000 that I'm going to try to maintain annually. So in addition to that, I'm adding $185,000 for kind of carryover awards that we haven't paid yet. In other words, some folks have been awarded facade improvement grants, and that work has not yet been completed. And so I'm just going to move that over into 26. So we'll have the money when those things come in, probably in 2026. So what that does is that maintains that $365,000 annual allocation for those things, as opposed to using that annual allocation up when we get new stuff coming in, or continue overflow stuff coming in, if that makes any sense. Does that make any sense? Did I stumble over that enough? Okay. Good to know. You're as confused as I am. So, with the budget, fund balance would increase almost $2 million to $2.6 million at the end of 26. Again, this fund balance is going to be built up for very large transfers in the future years. I don't remember right off the top of my head when we're going to do all 2.6 million, but it's going to be huge chunks in the next couple of years. So in addition to the operating fund that we talked about that's budgeted, I just kind of wanted to show you about this other fund that we have, and that's the Capital Projects Fund. That currently has a $5.6 million sitting in it, but almost all of that is allocated towards the projects that you see there. So outstanding projects really mean money that's been budgeted for these projects but not spent. But I'll also like to say these are outstanding projects. So we've got Connell Street, we've got the Spring Street Bridge, River Place Sewer, Penelope Sidewalks, Loop 121. This TERS fund has done great things for the city and continues to do so.
Mike, how do you have 70,000 unallocated in a capital projects fund?
So what happens is this fund earns interest every single month, and that's not been necessarily put to anything yet. So what that unallocated is what I'm saying. It's just not, it's not assigned to any specific. We'll do that every single time that we need money for a project. We're going to go and look at that, whatever that unallocated is.
Do you have an inflation factor on those projects that we work with, or the dollars we put in, we think the dollars?
That's a good point. Some no is the answer to that. So generally, the money that gets put towards these projects are based upon a specific contract, either one that we're about to execute or one that we know is coming. And that's the case in many of these, or we budgeted a certain amount based upon an expectation and we put it in.
So it's just a lot of these are placeholders in future years, and then as they get closer, then we allocate specifically. But a lot of this is
so I don't necessarily set aside money for things way out in year 5 unless that's the direction. These are generally very close to happening.
TERS, I think you guys have a kind of a ranked priority of like 80 to $100 million of projects. So the 70,000 is going to go to probably one of those. We just hadn't picked.
That's correct. That's correct. Good question. Any questions on TERS before we move on? Okay. Chris is going to come up and explain his budget for 2026. But before he does that, let's look at 2025. This fund, under his leadership, is right on target with budget, revenues, and expenses. Essentially, we're going to end probably with about 35,000 in fund balance for this fund. On the revenue side, though, for next year, revenue has to increase $467,000 in 2026. And you'll see that increase here. So the money in this fund comes from other city divisions. That's the way that's where an internal service fund, it's its revenue, because it's the city that is its customer.
So
yes, sir.
Not to nitpick, but is it more transfer revenue? I mean, I don't know the accounting term to that, but it's
yes,
transfers.
Yes and no.
Okay.
Accounting rules.
Yeah.
Because there is a service that's provided for money.
Gotcha.
It's a cost.
Gotcha.
For most other places, when I'm moving, you're exactly right. When I'm moving money from one to the other, it's a transfer because it's not necessarily based on a service that's being provided or a direct cost.
Okay.
Yeah. Is that?
Yeah. And it's my P brain. When I think of revenue, I think of positive coming into the city. With this one, it's a shell moving from here to there. And
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
The post office.
The reason that revenues have this is because this expenditures that goes up from 1.2 to 1.5. That 246,000 is driven primarily by $230,000 that IT is going to spend on upgrades to our data center. So servers, switches, and then we got phones and we got computers and we got all that sort of stuff. It's a very large purchase it has to make. And because you saw limited reserves here, I mean, and I'm not blaming that. I'm just saying that's because there's limited reserves. I can't use reserves again here in this fund. So that's how that allocation happens. Another thing, just so you know, just kind of interesting, that 657,000 is what we pay for software here at the city of Belton. That's most of what makes most of that money. Amazing how much those costs have continued to increase. So in the end, revenues of 1.5 million and expenses of 1.5, slight increase to reserves. You'll end 2026 right about that number of $43,000 in 2026. Any questions or we move on? Okay. And then our last internal service fund also works just like the IT fund, is building maintenance. So this fund is, again, pretty much in line with budget. There's 59% reserve balance here at the end of this year. That's a bit high, and I'll show you what I'm doing with that. We need to probably keep around 200,000 here for any event of big AC replacement and things like that. Revenues, again, these revenues come from these divisions. And so revenues are actually going down slightly by $4,800 to $417,000. And that's to pay for these things. In fairly flat budget that you see here, personnel costs go up slightly, just normal pay increase type things. Building maintenance costs are actually going down a little bit. We had some higher things that we had to replace in 2025 that we don't have to do in 2026. So where this is, I
Just one quick note. I sure want to make sure that we don't ever fall behind on roofs, maintenance, upkeep, appearance, stewards. And we need to be sure and allocate the dollars to maintain the buildings and the structures that we.
You're 100% correct, sir.
Please.
And where that happens, where you see that is that number right there. So what I'm planning on doing, because you had heard me before mention a rather lean year, especially in a general fund, I didn't want to increase this fund balance any more than I kind of had to, because those costs general fund. So by going ahead and using reserves here again in 2026, that kind of lessens the burden and the general helps out there. That's the plan. But you're 100% correct, Mayor Pro Tem. That's why we need to maintain a balance there. Okay. Moving on to EDC. BDC for 2025, expect to land. They're going to draw down reserves in 2025 by 5.8 million. And that's for all of the land purchases that they're doing there. You see that right there. This actually says that the budget's 1.7. We've already amended that. We added 7.8 million to that budget here in April, I believe, and I just didn't change this slide. Still, they could end 2025 with about 5.4 million in revenue. A good strong fund balance there in this fund. For 2026, a pretty flat budget for 2026 on the revenue side. Actually, I still have, like I did in the general fund, I'm showing a 4% increase in 2026, but the gain that you see in that line kind of is offset by the reduction that you see in miscellaneous income. So that miscellaneous income is essentially interest earnings. And as I before, I'm reducing 2026 interest earnings by 10% from that number, which is where I think we'll land at the end of 2024.
And just a quick comment. One of the things that I mentioned at the retreat was data gathering. And I don't know whether BEDs is going to take the lead or city share in that, but we have a very active summer in Belton, and people are using our parks, our splash pads, the 4th of July. It should be, I think, wise on our part to spend a little money and gather some information on where those people are coming from, what they're using. The activity at the creek is unbelievable. And I just think we have a real opportunity. Data is the new gold mine, or new gold. And I think we need to be gathering that, sharing it with the chamber, sharing it with our BDC if they're in charge, sharing it with others. But I just think we have a real opportunity, and there's applications out there that can capture cell phone data and tell us exactly where people are from, what they're doing, where they stopped and visited, and how long they stayed. And I just think that'd be a great opportunity for the community to have, and either target more of those people or data to use somehow. I just think we need to be doing it. And if we're earning 250,000 in interest income, we've got a little room to spend 30,000 and share that data with the chamber as well as city, and maybe the city partners with BEDC, but we're missing out, I think. You know, Temple years ago used to put out a statistic on daytime population versus living residents and how many people were coming in to work at their industrial park or businesses or whatnot. And we're just kind of in the dark, I feel like. So we really need to pursue that.
That's a good comment. On the expenditure side for EDC, expenditures fall by 562,000 again, comparing budget. So the ones I like for you though, this 150,000 that you see there in expenses, that's 150,000 that BDC board has agreed to contribute towards these life safety grants, partnering with the TERS fund to offer a $300,000 in total for improvements. This capital outlay that you see of 150,000 is for signage, entry way into the business park. And then this 300,000 that you see there is an increase in the match for our EDA grant for the Rockwool type project on 93. So good stuff there. They could end the year, again, there's revenues of 3.7 million, expenditures of 1.2. You might end 2026 at $7.9 million of reserves, obviously significantly more than annual expenditures. But they will put that to good use. As with the, I wanted to just show you the capital projects that's going on there. There's $3.2 million in their capital projects fund. When I looked at this, 387 of that is not allocated to projects. And again, these are outstanding projects. Rockwool, that I-14 projects that we have going on there. Let's see, South Pearl is done. Essentially, Avenue D is done. But I wanted to show you those. So, yes, sir.
I would say this, if you go back to where it shows the percent above reserves, I think it's probably more accurate to let us know what the reserve requirements are in that fund.
Yeah.
So that way we know that this is the economic development fund, right? This is a fund that's used to incentivize businesses, to acquire land, to do economic development activities. And so it's hard for us to do the math in our head to know how much of that is really reserves to manage and maintain the Economic Development Corporation and how much is incentives or potential whatever. So, and that's why because the 640 is kind of an outlier amongst funds, but it's supposed to be there.
That's what,
but really accounting for it on a line. And I don't know, I don't know what's best practice, but it would be not, I don't know.
So for your, to answer that particular claim, I agree with you.
Yeah.
Our fund balance policy only requires a minimum reserve level in general fund, water and sewer, and drainage.
Yeah, I understand.
Doesn't mean that we shouldn't have one here.
Yeah.
We can certainly explore doing that. And that's probably something we ought to look at. I agree with you. There's a certain amount that they really need every
$1
single
million reserve is a policy, and anything excess to that is a fund that's the board.
For operations.
This is operations. This is
I agree. That's a good
You
idea.
got to do that at home. You got a savings account and then we've got our big savings
account. Right.
We do.
I can address that when we start doing our.
We have a big.
Some things I want to share with you before we finish this discussion is we still are moving. The numbers are still moving. So, and we'll do that. We'll do this as based upon your feedback and the information that comes in, like property tax values, et cetera, until we adopt. But some things have been incorporated already after the date that I presented you the budgets already. So health insurance premiums, we are still way over 100% loss ratio. And our consultant is saying, you can pretty much expect insurance premiums to increase up to that rate cap of 15% that our current contract has. So health insurance, call it a 15% increase. When I gave you the general fund budget, it only had an 8% in there. So we've gone back and added that and worked those numbers through. Our retirement system contribution actually went up a little bit. I don't think that's a whole lot of money there. Our comp study is almost to see that result in July, I believe. But those numbers we haven't put in there yet because we want you to see it first, but I'm still working on that. Our general liability premiums actually went down. Woo, imagine that. So there's some savings from that. And then this IT and building maintenance fund stuff that we talked about today, those numbers have been some of those numbers that you've previously seen have changed. And then I will leave you with that one. This is the last the meeting. Y'all will bring forth a proposed budget for you, an official proposed budget, and then we really get going on the tax rate and things like that to support that. So.
One last little comment on my data soapbox. Maybe before we engage a marketing consultant, we ought to really consider that the data gathering tool. And I think that might be very, very beneficial to our marketing plan. Kind of hand it to
John Holmes. Be sure you win.
I just had a question,
Yes.
being new in my first budget season, from when I was in well, I still am, but my year in private sector, our department heads, we would have them do a budget, same as last year revenue, a 2% decrease, a 5% decrease, and a 10% decrease. So at any time we could say, you know what, all the revenues aren't what we expected on 2-year 5% decrease. When you're doing the budgets of the different departments, are you getting any kind of considerations like that, or is it just we have one budget and this?
Department heads they complete their entire budget. Then we review it after meetings with them. I tell them no, and then we put it back in. I'm saying that rather jokingly. But this particular budget is going to be challenging because, again, the unknown in the property tax and things like that. So I'm going to bring you a proposed budget that we might look at that as we get further along, and then say, no, we need to go and reduce it. Then we're all going to have some meetings again with department heads and have that kind of discussion. We didn't do it in advance. What I'm going to bring you is sustainable, or I would have already had those meetings with department heads. But does that answer? Yeah. That's the way we do it.
For more context, I think it'd be good for Luke. Once upon a time, we used to have a very detailed budgeting cycle. So when we would hotel motel, we would have the head of the Expo Center and the head of Belton. Stephanie, when she was at the chamber. Thank you, chamber. They would actually come and we would get all the numbers. Here's where the growth was, here's where the things were, here's what the budgets are. And we would get pretty much every department head would come and we would have meetings and lots of workshops. And it was hours and hours and hours for everybody. And especially for senior staff, that's probably maybe the third or fourth time that they've heard it. And so what we've done over the years is we've streamlined a lot of that. To your point, we don't go into the weeds. But I think if there are any areas that you would like to understand how that budgeting cycle works, that there is a transparency there for us that if you want to work with staff at, but we've just kind of felt that it's probably best for everybody not to be up here 3 times a week till 9 o'clock to get that level of detail. Yeah. Whether that's the right answer or the wrong answer, that's kind of what we've landed on. Now we've got a pretty lean budgeting cycle when it comes to policy. But I wouldn't say that it's shortcutted at the staff level.
Yeah. And the full budget is available. I mean, you can grab the 282 pages and thumb through it. And Mark and I've spent time with Mike on a personal basis, and he's very, very helpful.
More than happy to do that.
Questions or a specific area that, and I've done that. And so that's available too if you want to dig a little deeper, or we're all available for questions.
Yeah. Much like we trust Sam to hire and fire staff appropriately. This is kind of one of those, we put trust in Sam and Matt and Mike to streamline and trim and add where they need to.
Absolutely. When I first met Mike, he gave me the 2-inch.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
The
door stop?
The one we won awards for.
That's right.
We're paying by the pound.
That's right.
I-
There is an electronic version of that.
I mentioned this to staff, so a few of staff. I wanted to make it kind of a little more publicly before we get into CIP, because I see the CIP starts in 26. Right now, and John brought it up, we have a significant number of families come using the creek from Mary Hardin Baylor all the way to I-35. We've actually had pickup trucks just park in our parks and just hang out as they're there. And I think it's a wonderful thing, but I will say that the dignity of the humans that have to go there goes down quite a bit when they have to use the restroom. They either decide swimming or the little kids just go right off the sidewalk or some other, and there's not, I know we have restroom facility at Yeti Polk that's really not well. We also have another restroom at near 35 where the bus stop is, also not very well, also not always open. I really think we've got some funds. I think we can find a way. I really think it's important for young families to be able to have a restroom facility that they can access, especially in the area of the gym between those two. Also, I think we need to work on marking those restrooms because they're thing to say that we even have one. And so if you're coming from out of town, you don't even know if you just walk 60 yards that way around the bridge, because there's no sight line to it. So anyway, I just really think that that's something that we should do capital between now and the 26 CIP. And that's David's opinion. But I'm down there a lot, and I've traveled to Europe, and we always joke that like in Paris, I mean, legit, like you go in Paris and they're just going off in the bushes because they don't have public restrooms. So it's like, well, America, we got public restrooms. Well, I'm running Belton and we're using the bushes. So anyway.
The restroom that's on the back side of the gym, there's like 2 single use. Those are owned by them, right?
They're not open.
They are. It would be hard to consider them public. We've tried to advocate that they should be. But Mayor, to your point, several staff in this room are probably going to head nod because we've met several times Monday just about trying to develop a plan. I think everyone agrees with your assessment, and many of you have shared it. There are just far more people at the creek than there ever have been. Every time we look out the window, it's full. And our duty needs to extend, our service needs to extend a little further. So absolutely, we're looking at solutions to try and get that.
Well, and there's also, I mean, downtown, there's not a single post room downtown.
True. And this may be one of those things that we can use with our tourism, is to have a small tourism kiosk with like air conditioning, sodas and chips and a men's and a women's restroom, because we do have a lot of events that it would be nice to have, especially on weekends. Because even like the city hall, you can't get to the restroom without going through a secured area. So there's nothing in the hallway.
No, we need to be past the floodwater stage, but we need to get that down as close as we can to the creek. So absolutely.
Okay. All right. That's last year's or budget, or the last of this year's budget. Next is the CIP. So item 17 is receive a report on the fiscal year 26 to 2030 capital improvement program. And provide input on projects and scheduling for inclusion in the 26 budget. All right.
Okay, so a very, very large portion of our annual budget is related to capital and capital improvements. And so I wanted to take you through our 5-year CIP. So first question, obviously, what is a CIP? And essentially it's a 5-year plan for a project that we need to complete that we've identified. And why do that? Well, one, it's a GFOA best practice. to plan for these things. It helps me when somebody tells me we need a $5 million project or a $15 million project in the future. I need to start planning funding for things like that. But probably the most important part is that it makes sure that we have money available when we need it for those things. So we look 5 years out. We get with department heads and ask them what do they see as coming, any big projects that they see in the next 5 years. And then we get costs for those things. Then they come to me and say, how do we pay for this? And so I work through some ideas on funding where we might be able to get some money for that. But a key component of your CIP is don't forget the O&M that might be associated with that. So you don't want to build a fire, for example, and forget to put firefighters in it. That's our library, and forget to that's a classic error that I can give you specific examples about. Big picture of our CIP. For the next 5 years, we've identified over $80 million worth of projects that this city needs to do. 25 million could come from bonds on that, $26 million of grants possibly. $19 million would be provided by TERS and $10 million from other places. So let's look at specific things. Good, you can kind of see that. So a few of these I want to highlight. First is this here. So Miller Heights Public Safety Facility. In 2025 and in 2026, we have 150,000 in there for what we're calling small. Let's get this thing up and running. That $4 million that you see in 2027 would be, how much would it cost to completely renovate this? And I believe that was BISD's number. We haven't done a full-fledged thing on that yet. But that's kind of why I have that on this CIP. Also related to that, out here in 2030 is $750,000 that we think we could build a park at Miller Heights. We're calling it Southeast Community Park because we already have a community park. Let's see what else I have here. So Wheat Road Extension, a big project out here in 2020. Design is in 2026, construction in 2028. I want to show you here these projects that we just added. Davis and Hughes, $1.5 million. That shared use project is 2.8. We don't pay for all that. We also have a Sparta shared use path. So $1 million project in 2027 and 2028. And then I said 12 million, but our thumb in the wind cost for burying utilities, dry utilities along 6th is about $10 million. So for the general government, we've identified $54 million worth of projects over the next 5 years. So, Mr. Finance Director, how do we pay for these things? Well, these are our various funding sources for these type of projects. And so I have that broken down. So it looked in 2028, we might need to issue bonds for that Wheat Road Extension project. So those bonds that we have there, the look of that is a project in the TERS and in the TERS project list. So we would likely we'd try to issue maybe TERS bonds in 2028. But if we can't do that, or there's some cost prohibition for that, if you will, we would issue certificates of obligation, but they would be funded with TERS revenues, supported by TERS revenues. So no property tax increase related to that $6.5 million issuance. Grant funding is large, 25 million here. And I'm not telling you that we have secured grants for these projects totaling 25 million. I'm telling you, I hope we get $25 million worth of grants. We do. Or we have to issue bonds or find some other for some other funding source. So you see the $10 million in 2030, that's for that $10 million underground utility project. You see this $10 million that we have here, $5 million here, projects associated with those. So forth. I don't want to get too crazy with that. Where am I going? Going the wrong direction. This other one that you want to pay attention to is this operating fund revenue there. That's what I'm telling you we might see in an annual budget of the general fund. would be contributions for capital projects, totaling $1.3 million over this 5-year time frame. Again, this is me just scheduling things. There's a huge contribution there over this 5-year period by the TERS, 15.7 million. And then this other funding that you see is funding from developers, for example. Toll Bridge Road, $4 million of that project here is going to be paid for by developers. So the total value of the road I have to include, but we don't have to pay that. Here's the O&M effect I wanted to show you. This is just a thumb in the wind of how much in additional costs would you have over the next 5 years, or sometimes there's savings. If you're replacing something that you're spending a lot of money on maintenance and you've replaced it, then your maintenance costs go down. That's general government projects. On the utility side, we've identified $25 million worth of projects over the next 5 years. Here is a big one. That's the Wheat Road water line project that's in a far out year. Let's see what other one I want to show you. So here is that $1.5 million project that we talked about earlier, repairing the sewer lines underneath 6th. That's that $1.5 million. We have 2 projects in here for BDC funding, the $500,000 a piece, kind of as a placeholder, if you will, for utility extensions to their properties. And the other point out is this $550,000 for the detention pond at Avenue I to help with some flooding we have down in that area. So like the other ones, now how do we pay for these things? For the utility projects, it looks like we could have, again, not telling you we are, 2 bond issuances. Again, I try to line up bond issuances together if I can. So that's why you see this in 2028. There's a $5.5 million bond issuance there. That 12.8 is primarily for that right there, that Wheat Road water line project. Let's see, EDCs, there's EDCs $1 million. Not a whole lot of operating contributions there over the next 5 years. And TERS funding, again, contributing a significant amount towards capital projects. So $80 million or so over the next 5 years. This is a moving target. Every single year we'll sit down and ask ourselves, are these projects still, do the costs need to change? Are they slotted in the right year? That sort of stuff. But this is the CIP that I'm bringing forth in the proposed budget, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
I don't see a parking garage on them.
No parking garage is included herein, at least yet. Again, this is within the next 5 years.
Right. Any questions? Crickets.
That's a lot.
Yeah,
That's a lot.
it's a lot. It's
Stuff.
yeah, it is a lot of good stuff. I will say the thing that's amazing to me is to look and see over 5 years that the general fund would contribute like 1 point something million total, when it used to be all out of the general fund or debt.
Right.
And to be able to find the funding sources. Again, staff getting grants is amazing. Having a TERS responsible TERS fund and budget, the BEDC work that you guys continue to do. Right. So there being nothing else on the agenda, we will call this thing adjourned. Have a good evening. Go enjoy the thunder.
Great job.